think that sets it up, Cam, for webinar 4.
Awesome.
Are we all set up there?
Oh, we are all set.
All right, mission control is ready to go. I'm ready to go. I say we beam down Dan and Steven.
Let's do it.
All right, let's go down. Webinar 4.
All right. Webinar 4. Let's get her done.
Ground
Webinar
control
4.
to
Yeah.
age of
RC car tuning basics. Steven here.
Let me shut this portal.
Web 4, RC car tuning. Y'all know the rules. This is Andrew here, your host. We got Daniel over there and Steven about to lead the charge. Cameron on the sticks. You know the rules. This is a live stream. That means all of your comments and questions will get typed in live to us while we're demonstrating the concepts on set. And we will try and answer you as they can. Today we're talking about RC car tuning, starting with durability of your car and then drivability. Is that the right order?
Yeah, more or less.
And then we're talking about awards for the HORIZON Grand Prix coming up soon. Get ready, stay tuned. Steven and Dan, y'all ready to take it away?
Yeah.
Ready here to take it away.
Let's give her.
So as Andrew said, we're going to focus today on tuning the car, making it a little bit easier to handle and a little bit more durable for the race. So let's just jump right into it. So as you can see right here from our above head cam, we have 2 different chassis setups. I'm not going to go into the details of what's going on here, but I want you to focus on the bumpers. The bumper is going to be your first line of defense. Dan, do you know why?
Well, if I was in the race, I would say your car's going to be moving forward, and the first thing it's going to hit, if you were to hit anything, which is bound to happen over a 3-hour race, is probably the front end of your vehicle.
That's exactly right. So as you can see here on the table, we have a couple different bumper designs and slightly different material. The first thing I want to focus on is the actual material we're using. You can see from the stock, this is the stock one that comes with the car, as you can see here.
Okay.
And it's kind of dense, right?
All right, so I'm pushing pretty hard on here. It's not really moving too much.
Right.
What would be the benefit of this version, I guess?
The benefit of this version is it'd be tougher. I mean, this thing will last no problem. It won't flake away. This thing will last a couple races. A drawback from this one is that it's really kind of hard. I mean, you can kind of see that this one's pretty hard. So really the idea for a bumper is to absorb the impact. Right. If you have something that's really tough, like this, it's not maybe so absorbent. A lot of the force from your impacts are going to get transferred into your suspension system, and things could break. As opposed to that, on the other hand here, if you could see this bumper, it's much more absorbent. And this is basically just a scrap piece of foam, packing foam that I found. You can use a number of different types of foam and material. The idea being something absorbent, something squishy.
Take the impact on a hit.
Something that'll take the impact.
That's the goal. You want to move it away from the other components and to the front.
Right. So the goal, just like you said, that was perfectly described. We are trying to absorb the impact of your crashes in the bumper. That way we save your suspension components.
Okay.
And so before we get in any further, I want to talk about a couple of components that tend to break, that I've seen break. Yeah, 101. So these are things that you should be aware of.
Most fragile components of the vehicle.
I don't know if I'd call it fragile, but over a 3-hour race, stuff will break. And a lot of it depends on driving ability.
Sure.
But
I hold, you point.
You hold, I point. So the number one place where I see breakages are right here in the front suspension pieces. You have your tie rods here where you can adjust your steering. They tend to break around these areas here. They also tend to break, right, if we could turn it sideways slightly, we could see that. They tend to break right about here. And these screws on top, there's a set screw on top here and one on bottom. These tend to wear away, especially when you've been hitting things over and over. So that's actually a potential place where you might be able to upgrade either by 3D printing from different types of materials or even by using metal. You can use metal components as well. Again, if we're talking durability, that's a way to make it super durable. Start using metal components, things that won't break. On the flip side of that may affect your drivability slightly. It makes the car heavier. You're going to use more energy in that sense. And the car it'll handle slightly differently depending on the weight. So most important upgrade or thing that I would advise anyone to do is make a really good, really squishy bumper. Not just for the front, but for the rear as well. Because as Daniel said, you're driving forward, you're going to be hitting things, but there's also other people in this race. They may hit you. Okay, and that another potential area right here in the rear suspension, kind of the same thing. Things can break. So if you have a nice squishy bumper in the rear, nice squishy bumper in the front, your car's protected, you're less likely to break.
So without changing anything else on the vehicle, if you had one thing to upgrade, would it be a bumper?
Yes. If I had nothing else,
Yeah.
I would upgrade the bumpers. This will save the life of your car
Okay.
very easily.
So
And something to consider also is this could potentially be free. I mean, if you go to a fabric store or somewhere and just let them know that you're part of this program and just ask them for a few scraps, you don't need a whole sheet of it. I mean, just a couple of scrap pieces will do pretty well.
everyone gets a shipment from some company. I won't say any names, but you get some kind of material in any, I guess, online shipment. So you just look what's in there, maybe find something. But what's the strategy for about going out and cutting something out?
So the strategy, what I did,
Where do you start?
pretty simply, I used a stock bumper as a template just to get the holes lined up because I'm using the stock mounting
Right.
plate here. But the idea is with your car body here, and this is just one of the Mirai bodies we're going to be using for this race this year. As you place it over, you can see on this one here that there's not a whole lot of room between the front of the car and the actual bumper.
Right. Is that good or bad?
That's really good because another thing to consider is your body, eventually after crashing, your body will break and wear away eventually. So
Right.
if you take up that space and you don't allow the body to flex, it's
So instead of like going like this all the time, it's nice and snug, right?
exactly.
Okay.
Whereas if you look at the stock bumper design here, and we just put it there, you see that there is quite a bit more space here. And again, you're probably a lot more likely to start breaking things in this sense.
And right. And when it's not snug too, it can start getting caught under things, right?
Yep.
Like hitting the actual track.
Yeah, that's a good point. And this one's not trimmed to fit. This is just a blank here.
Right.
But with that in mind, yeah, that's a very good point.
All right.
So moving along with drivability,
Step one. I mean, do you have something to actually cut this out and go through the process?
I pretty much just use a razor blade. I do actually think maybe I have it in my toolbox, but I mean, you can use a razor blade, you can use a knife, really anything, and it's kind of a fun activity to do as well. And that might be something for some of the teachers that are involved with our program to do. Get a couple different types of materials, make this an activity. You have a couple kids to each one, and then you can actually test and see which bumper is better, which one is more durable. Some of them might be too soft, some of them might be too hard. So to find that happy medium, again.
Before we move on, you said a comment about the rear. You fixed one on top of or in the front. Should this one be smaller, equal sizing? Just so, should it be up high, something like that? Would that make sense, or down low? Where would you angle it?
I would say that's something that you guys would have to, people involved in this would have to figure out as far as how to mount it, because there isn't a stock mounting point. There are a few things that I would do, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's right or wrong. And again, I'll leave that one up to you guys. This is an engineering challenge, so if you could figure out a good way to mount a stock bumper or a bumper to the back to make it look stock, let us know. That would be pretty cool to see.
All right, moving on.
So moving on, and again, these are things that I've seen over the last few races, things that tend to break and ways of kind of getting around that. So the next thing that I think is really important to talk about is the actual rim choice. I don't have any broken ones with me, but if you can see here, I've kind of outlined with a little bit of orange marker some of the places that I see crack and break a lot in these rims. And again, if you have a small bumper or even a big bumper, you're bound at some point to crash into something and your rim will hit. And again, the force is transferred through and it will start breaking things.
So on these markings that are on here, how did you notice these as a weak point, and what does each one mean? Why do you think there is a weak point on each part?
I noticed these as a weak point through experience of seeing all the races and practice races that we've done in the past year or two. I constantly see, and these are the stock rims that come with the kit. That's why I'm illustrating these.
Do you think
but we tend to get breaks here and usually in the middle.
Do you have any idea why that might be? Is it material that's used, the material choice, or?
Yeah, I think just this material is pretty thin. The good and bad about that, the good thing is it's lighter. So again, we're picking up efficiency. The bad thing is you're losing a little bit of durability. So there's always that kind of middle ground where you're weighing kind of the pros and cons, durability versus lightweight, right?
Okay.
So, but a couple of options. Again, these are the stock ones. These are great. They work. But if you are crashing often, these can and will break.
Crashing or running into the barriers. What does crashing mean?
Crashing, when I say crashing, I mean hitting the car against something that you're not intended to hit. Other vehicles, the sidewall, the bumpers, the barriers, yeah.
It's bound to happen. It's impossible to.
It's going to happen. You're going to be on a track with 20 to 30 other people. You're going to rub, what does it say? Rubbin's racing, right?
Cold trickle.
It's cold trickle. That's going to happen. Days of Thunder. Okay, so moving forward, ways to upgrade this. Again, you can get this same rim, but you can find it in metal, aluminum, magnesium. There's different types. Again, you're going weight versus durability, but personally, I would think if you got a little bit of extra cash to spend on some metal rims, that's probably one of the better ways to go. But another way is to get, I really like these. I found these. I think these are made by Tamiya, not to give them a plug, but I really like those rims. They work pretty well. And again, these are real tough. As you can see right here, we'll weigh them later, but the material is slightly thicker, more durable. So option 3 from these is I found a really nice CAD file for almost the exact same rim on Thingiverse. They weigh roughly about the same, and you can see this one's a little bit beat up. I've actually tested this one, and these ones work really, really well, and it didn't really cost that much. It took me roughly 8.5 hours to print, I think like 12 of them. So.
Did you pick red for any specific reason, Steven?
I had a bunch of red filament.
Okay.
So I red.
Okay.
Yeah, using what you got, just make it happen one way or another.
And is there a place where they could find the CAD file that you found online?
Yeah, just go to Thingiverse, thingiverse.com, and just look up 1/10 scale RC car wheels. There's a whole bunch of different designs. And again,
We'll add this one to the link in the YouTube video.
Yeah, we could put a link to that in the YouTube video, no problem.
Cam, write that down.
So as far as basic, and again, we're talking tuning 101, basic things you can do to make your car survive and thrive in the race. Bumpers and rims and suspension components are probably some of the basic upgrades I would do.
I was going to say, in terms of car, I guess, we're getting into a lot of components, but what is your overall strategy? Because your strategy plays into what you're focusing on, and when you're tuning 101, what is your strategy as being Steven, the fuel cell / car guru that we have on the team? What is your strategy amongst all this? It seems like you're talking about durability. You're more focused on keeping the car together.
So again, if you want to make your car, I'm assuming we're just working with the stock chassis. There's other chassis options, there's other things you can do, but if you don't want to spend the extra money on it, if we're just working with the stock, these are some things that I've seen that people have done
effectively
that are effective to the car, and these are the people who are doing these basic things are surviving till the end of the race. If you can survive till the end, you're very high likelihood of placing. So that's just something to consider. If you're still in the race, you can win, right? If you're out of the race halfway through, your chances of winning go down. So that's the goal of this and this webinar and just the race in general is to finish and survive to the end. These are a couple of basic things and just tips that will help you get to the end of the race, right?
Okay.
So from here, I think this is a good point to switch over. We said that we were talking about durability. The next thing, those are.
So we don't talk. What's in this?
Well, first of all, this is a center point, so I know where the camera is more or less pointing. Also, these are just delicious, and I love them. So.
Okay. I just want to,
Yeah.
Just want to make sure.
The next thing I want to go into is drivability. Setting the car up. We made the car tough, all right? So we know that the car has a much better chance of surviving to the end of the race. Now let's make the car a little bit easier to handle, all right? So here's a couple tips that we can do to accomplish that. So right here, I have a completely bone stock car, okay? And the bone stock car should drive pretty good coming out of the box. There's really not a whole lot of adjustment you need, but some things to consider are suspension angles. And that's kind of the first thing I want to talk about. This is in no way, shape, or form an in-depth look at tuning suspension. This is just real basic, kind of to get your car going straight, because you guys might notice the car slightly turns one way or the other. So there's a couple things you can do. But the easiest thing you can do is to adjust your trim, okay? What is trim? Trim is a function on the remote that allows you to adjust the wheel angle and the suspension from the servo.
Similar like axle alignment on a normal car?
Not so much.
Is that a really bad
No,
analogy?
that's not a bad analogy. That's kind of close. What I would say is
alignment.
Somewhat to your alignment. And this is just kind of a rough way to tune it, but I'm going to turn the remote on here. And I want you guys, if we can get the overhead camera, can we see this here?
Good to go.
Maybe we'll get the Andrew cam to get a little closer here, but I want to focus on these wheels here. And notice that, so if I, right, we're turning, that's moving them back and forth,
Overhead.
right?
Overhead.
But what I'm going to do here, since the servo is connected to channel 1, if you see on your remote here, you see that, Andrew? Channel 1 here on the remote, I'm going to adjust it all the way one way and all the way other. And you can, there's auditory cues that can kind of help you find the middle point. But you'll see that this is moving on its own. So let's just assume that my car is turning really hard to the right, this way, okay? So what I'm going to do is just adjust that slightly. And you'll,
What button is that?
it's channel 1 here, right on the remote on the top here. It says channel 1. And you just adjust it this way or that way, either left or right.
Perfect.
So I'm going to go all the way one way and all the way the other.
So you just hold it back or hold it forward?
So you just push it one way and you notice now my wheels are spinning this way.
Yeah.
Or
They're
they're
turned.
turned this way, right?
See that in the overhead?
Can we get that in the overhead?
Cool.
Okay. It's probably hard to see because we're a little bit far away.
Sure, I'll just do it like this.
So
it's
now I'm
almost like
going to
that,
go
right?
completely the other way.
Carol. You can see him turning. So now it's straight there.
And so now that's completely the other way, right?
So what is this used for?
So say you're driving on the track and you notice your car keeps pulling to the right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit trim left a little bit. And so trim left will straighten my wheels out. And this is a real quick way to tune your car,
Yeah.
just to get it going straight on the track, right? And again, you can get into much finer detail. There's sub trim. You can get really detailed with this, but this is just the basic once again. And then let's actually get the above cam here. Dan, if you would be so kind as to hold it up so we can show. Don't worry about that guy. Let's look at the angle of our servo arm here. So let's go here and let's focus on this arm right here. Now, this arm that's connected to the servo here controls the suspension, right? So I'm going to put trim all the way one way. And you guys can see there, it goes a little bit slow, but now the angle of it is this way, right? Now I'm going to go the other way completely. You see it moving slightly?
Makes a pretty rad noise too.
Yeah, it makes a cool noise. Now it's turning this way, right? And so that just gives us a little bit of alignment from the front. So let's go ahead and put that down. Okay, so, and then based off of that, there's a couple of other things that you really need to consider when doing suspension adjustments. Again, we're going to basically touch on some of these things, and then we'll get a little bit deeper into future webinars. There's two really important angles that affect steering, and they affect how the car handles. First one is toe.
Okay.
All right. So toe, if we're looking at from above, is the angle of the wheels this way or out.
Okay.
So this would be toe in. This would be toe out.
Okay.
Okay, and the basic idea here, for setting up a car, again, we're just talking simple here. You want a little bit of toe out, and this will make your steering a little bit more predictable, and it'll give you better steering coming out of corners, right?
Is this used within what's a normal everyday sedan? What would you see? What's their normal toe?
They would probably have a little bit of toe out. Race cars might have a little bit more.
Okay.
It really depends on the type of racing you're doing.
Okay.
Some cars even might want a little bit of toe in for stability.
So YouTube videos out there encourage.
There's
people to
tons of
look at what it
YouTube
means.
videos. Yeah, there's a wealth of knowledge out there as far as how to tune suspension. But again, these are just basic ideas,
Toe in,
things that you
toe
should
out.
do. You want a little bit of toe out.
Toe out.
Okay, slightly, just a little bit of toe out. It'll make your car a little bit more predictable when you're driving it. It'll make it easier to handle.
You want to show what that means?
Yeah, so let's get our nice diagram here to talk about toe.
Guys, I do have a quick question coming in from online.
Yes, what's the question?
It had to do with the filament materials that we were using earlier. Yeah, they're wondering on the wheels, what filament materials did you use?
This is just PLA, the red stuff here, as you guys can see. This is just simply PLA. Again, you can use a whole bunch of different kinds of materials. This is actually PLA with roughly, I think I use 40% infill. If you want to go a little bit lighter, for those of you 3D printers out there, you can go 10 or 15% infill, even as much as 100. If you really want some tough wheels, again, you're adding weight. This is just PLA. If you guys want to use any kind of polycarbonate or something, I would use something a little bit stiffer. You know, maybe nothing like Ninja Flex or anything like that, but something that's, you know, that can take some damage, is durable. So this is just PLA.
Cool.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, cool. Now the glare is a little bit gone. So
Okay.
walk us through what we got going on here.
So back to toe, right?
So this is the chassis. This is the outline for the chassis.
Yeah, so let's assume that we're looking at the same angle as our car here. We're looking from the top down, okay? So this is the front of our chassis. These are our axles here, and these are our tie rods here where we can adjust suspension. So your toe angle, to put it simply, we'll start here roughly.
That's good.
And we'll say there. Your toe is this angle here, and we'll say your center line keeps going to here. This is your toe angle.
So one would be toe.
So this would be toe out,
Yeah.
and this would be toe in.
In and out.
In and out, or out and in. Again, there's a bunch of places where you can go to figure out exactly how to do this. There's also a couple of pretty sophisticated pieces of machinery or that you can use to actually measure this. We'll show a link to that in a bit.
Does it have to do with more surface area being on the track, or?
Really, so this makes it has to do with the angles of the tires, right? And so as you go in and out of turns, right, the angles of the tires change slightly, right? Especially where the weight is and that kind of thing. And again, without getting too specific, going too crazy into it, slight little bit of toe out is beneficial for our type of racing.
Cool.
For track or circuit style racing, toe out, make the car a little bit easier to handle, and it makes it a little bit easier, a little snappier coming out of turns. So something to consider. Okay, so that's the first, in my opinion, that's probably one of the more important angles, again, because it dictates how your car steers.
Okay.
The second most important angle is camber. So if we assume that we are now looking at the car from the front, if we can look at it from the Andrew cam here. So Andrew cam from the front here, camber is now, if I can get that off, this angle here. So this is negative camber, that's positive camber. Okay, again, there's benefits to either or depending on what type of driving and racing you're doing. For our type, you want slightly negative camber. Again, this makes it a little bit more stable coming in and out of turns. I think this makes it a little more stable coming into turns. So if you have a little bit of negative camber and a little bit of toe out, your stability going in and out of turns is going to increase a good amount. So let's get that on a diagram so we can kind of see a little bit better idea of what that is.
Right now, and bam, done.
That was a very quick drawing. Okay, so the last one we assume we were looking at it from the top. This one, let's assume we're looking at it straight from the front.
Okay.
Okay. Same kind of deal here. If this is our center point here, this is our center line of the tire.
Like this, right?
So we're looking at it like that, okay? Your camber, if we take a section of it,
Very nice.
is this angle here. Okay, this is your camber angle right there, okay? And so again, like we spoke about, without getting too complicated or too into it, a little bit of negative camber, roughly around 2 degrees. I know for track and circuit racing, negative 2 degrees is right about where everyone starts. But for our type of racing as well, even though it's scaled down, a -2, roughly around that, is a pretty good starting point. And again, there's just little adjusters on the top here. That's how you adjust the camber, and little adjusters here on the sides where you adjust the toe.
Okay.
So that's a very quick look at suspension adjustment and alignment, and it really just kind of understanding what these angles mean and how they affect the car's performance.
Okay.
Right?
Perfect.
So that's camber and caster and suspension tuning in a nutshell. Again, this is in no way a exclusive, or it's an all-encompassing way to tune your suspension. It's just kind of a basic guideline to get you understanding. Tuning 101, that's the name of the game, that's what we're doing.
Okay.
So from there, now that we understand how to tune the car, we understand how to tune the remote, let's go into a couple of things that you can do to make your car better, right? And again, we're assuming that you have no budget for parts, you have no budget for upgraded parts. These are just things you can do right off the bat that make your car handle and just perform better.
Okay.
So I'm going to take this here. And again, this is our completely stock car.
All right.
This is a somewhat modified stock car that I've been building here. And as you can see, that we have on the towel here, these are all what I understand is non-essential parts that I took off.
Ah.
So,
So what is a big part in racing? Weight reduction, right?
well, a big part in racing is speed and efficiency.
And you get there?
The easiest and quickest way to increase speed and efficiency is to make the car lighter.
Which would be non-essential parts.
Non-essential parts, the way I see it.
Okay.
So I took this chassis, I made it two-wheel drive, took out the drive shaft, took out the front differential, and I took out the axles.
And with all this kind of stuff, what is a pro and con of 2- and 4-wheel drive before they just start ripping out?
Okay, so that's a whole nother conversation.
Why did you choose?
We can do a whole nother webinar on that. But with a 4-wheel drive, your car is going to be more stable. It's going to be easier to drive, easier to tune, and you're going to have more grip in the corners.
So if you're a beginner, if your first year, would you recommend 4 or 2-wheel?
If you've never driven before and you have no experience driving, stick with 4-wheel drive and figure out other ways to lighten your car.
Okay.
Another thing you can do that wouldn't do too much is you can kind of see it here. I've done it a little bit, but I haven't got too crazy. You can just start drilling holes into the chassis and lightening it.
Are those holes drilled because you did it on purpose, or you're trying to screw something in?
Those holes are drilled specifically for certain components that I'm putting on, but
that was.
But the idea, the idea is there. You make lightning holes, right?
Okay.
So weight reduction. Here, I took off this bracket. I took off all this stuff because I wanted to make this a rear-wheel drive. I have a little bit of experience with driving, so I figured for me, the handling characteristics are worth taking out some of the extra parts. So for me, it was worth it.
So where did this come from? Show the comparison. I'll hold it.
So this came from right here. That was a cover over the, as you can see right here, that's removed. This main bracket right here from the middle has been removed. Drive shaft's removed.
What is this guy?
This is just kind of a side piece here. It goes like that for the same cover.
Okay.
These are the front axles. And as some of you guys probably noticed from the practice race, you're losing these anyways, so I figured might as well take them off. And I think a really good comparison here is let's actually weigh this stuff and see how much weight we're actually losing. So what I'm going to do here is we got our jeweler scale that we used from when we did the hydro sticks. I'm going to turn that on. If it will go on. Sometimes you got to push the batteries in to make it work. Let's turn that off. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to set this on before it zeroes out. That's just a quick way of tearing your scale. So now if you notice, that's how much this thing weighs, but when I put it on,
Zeroes out.
Roughly. Let's do that again. And you can kind of see it through the top here. Okay, so we're at 0. So let's just take a quick weight measurement of all the stuff that we took off. These are the rear body clips, or the what you would, I guess, connect the body to. I like to just use the front ones and just kind of use the back to, sandwich it real quick and get on and off. Right there, just those alone, almost 4 grams. These coverings here, so we're up to 15 grams. Drive shaft is another, okay, 10. So we're at 24.
So each axle weighs 5.
Roughly 5 grams, so it's another 10. The differential here, pieces for the differential, that one's pretty heavy. So 90. We're up to about 90 grams.
120?
120, and then these little bearings that were on the front and back of the differential there. 122 grams, so that's a few ounces there. It's probably 3 or 4 ounces, roughly.
Do you know the weight of the total stock car, if you keep everything on there?
Total stock car with the fuel cell on it and hydro sticks is about 5 pounds.
Okay, 5 pounds.
About
now,
5 pounds.
What are the top 5 teams? What are they coming at in terms of weight in their cars?
The top 5 teams are probably getting it down to a couple pounds. Without mentioning any names specifically, I know one school is probably hovering right around 2 pounds.
Okay.
Another school is probably just right below 2 pounds, maybe closer to 1.5.
Yeah.
So I think maybe one school might even be close to a ½ pound. So.
Okay. All right. So
weight, losing weight gains efficiency.
Gentlemen, so we have another question coming in. What was the original weight of the chassis before and after you took away all of these parts?
I don't know if my scale will go that high. I know the original chassis with everything fully loaded is about 5 pounds. right? This chassis here, with all the stuff that I've taken off of it, is roughly a half a pound lighter. So fully loaded, this one will be about a half a pound lighter than this one. We'll say 4.5, maybe slightly less than 4.5 pounds.
Yeah, so
And
5.
again, completely stock car. I did nothing to it except just remove some stuff that I determined was not essential.
So 1.5 to 2 pounds, you're like an elite racer. You have a great team. But 3 pounds, if it's your first year, would be a good benchmark. Maybe to set as like something that's really hard to achieve, but something you could strive for.
Yes, I would say if you can get the car between 3 and 4 pounds, fully loaded, we're
Yeah.
talking fuel cell, hydro
Everything.
sticks, everything. That's
You're
a
doing good?
pretty good benchmark.
Cool. All right, we're getting close on time. Let's keep grinding out. What are the few last things you want to get through?
So one last thing to consider, I did take away all this stuff. That is going to affect how the car handles.
Okay.
Especially a lot of the whole front differential system that I took out. The car is going to handle much differently. It's going to be much more prone to oversteer now. So if you're going into a turn without this front catching grip and gripping the road, the rear is much more likely to slip out or you'll start drifting, right? Again, that takes driver training and it takes really good setting up of the car. But I think our top 2 or 3 teams are probably running rear-wheel drive cars, so something to
Okay.
consider. Also, if you notice now, we talked about durability versus lightweight. This car is a lot more lightweight than this one, but I wouldn't necessarily say this one's more durable. I mean, the bumper kind of helps, that kind of thing, but now if you notice, this chassis has some flex on it.
Yeah.
Whereas our stock chassis, there's no flex really, hardly any. So another thing to consider
Right. Okay.
when you're making these adjustments here.
So those are that's tuning 101. I'm sure we can
Tuning
talk about
101, we'll have more videos in the future about advanced tuning tips, tuning your suspension, maybe tuning your remote differently, some other things you can do, other potential upgrades you can make for efficiency. But I think for now, this is probably a pretty good benchmark.
So, last thing that I know we wanted to touch base on was award categories.
Yes.
What award category would this be kind of be involved with?
In my mind, this makes sense to go with our overall Endurance Champion Award. And so our Endurance Champion Award is measured by who completes the most amount of laps in 3 hours. So I think, what was our benchmark for SoCal Regional last year? Was it around like
800?
800 laps? I think at the world race, it was like a 6-hour race. What was it, like 1,400, 1,500, something like that?
Sure.
It's pretty high. So we'll say if your heat in the race that you're in, if someone does 1,200 laps and someone does 1,100 and someone does 800, that's kind of how we base it. So 1,200 would be first, 11 would be second, 8 would be third, and so on.
Okay.
And we do give awards for top 3. So first, second, and third, top 3 lap counts are given awards for this category.
So, great. So what do you think? So,
Wrap it up, boys. I think that's the end of webinar 4. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Next week, I think we're going to vacuum forming. Is that right?
yes, car body.
Next week,
Car
vacuum
body.
forming. It's
Woo!
gonna be fun.
All right.
So, peace out. See you next week.
Catch you next week.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. 7, 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2. Check ignition and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. indifferent today. For here am I sitting in a tin can.